I just wanted to surprise my daughter with a gift she had been dreaming about for years. I didn't forget my nephew either. Even though we're not that close, I still gave him an expensive tech toy. But instead of hearing a thank you, I got criticized for giving too much to my own child. Things hit a boiling point when my sister called to scold me for not buying her son a car, and when I finally said something that maybe everyone thinks but never dares to say, everything exploded. Was I wrong to remind her? Your child is not my child. I think many parents will understand this feeling. When you spend an entire month thinking about a gift that truly means something for your child, something that goes beyond just being a material object, a symbol of love, recognition, and a turning point in your kid's life. My daughter just turned 17, a big milestone. She's a hardworking, well-behaved kid. She's never been into flashy things and has always been there for me through the hardest times. Ever since she was 13, she's mentioned wanting a car when she grows up. Not to show off, but so she could get a part-time job, help me out with driving around, and have a little freedom and privacy of her own. I never made her any promises, but I always kept that in mind. And this year, when my finances finally allowed it, I decided to make that dream come true. I didn't tell anyone, not even her, because I wanted to see that look of pure surprise and happiness on her face. I planned everything down to the smallest detail. Picking the right model, finding a trustworthy dealership, handling all the paperwork in my name for legal safety, and even arranging insurance and driving lessons for her later. Everything was done with one goal in mind, to make her birthday as special and unforgettable as possible. But then, there was one thing that made everything more complicated than I expected. My nephew's birthday, my sister's son, fell on the exact same day. The two of them are the same age, same birthday, and grew up with a lot in common, but in completely different circumstances. I'm not very close to my sister. To be honest, our relationship is a bit touchy. She tends to blame others for everything, complains about things that don't really matter, and often stirs up arguments out of nowhere. Because of that, I try to keep my distance and avoid unnecessary interaction. That said, I still care about my nephew. He's family after all. Just because adults don't get along doesn't mean kids should suffer for it. I remember last year, during his birthday, my sister mentioned that he had always wanted a car too, just like his friends, to drive to school and maybe get a job, but her family was going through a really tough time financially, barely getting by, so getting a car was out of the question. I understood, and I felt even worse knowing that he was the quiet type. Never really voiced what he wanted, just kept it all in. The kind of kid who bottles things up and never asks for much. This year, I wanted to do something for him too. At least something meaningful, practical, and fun. Something that could help him relax and enjoy himself a little in the middle of all the pressures of growing up. After some thought, I decided to buy him a brand new PlayStation 5 with all the accessories. Something I knew for sure his mom couldn't possibly afford right now. Not because I was comparing the material value between a car and a gaming console, but because I wanted both of them to feel seen, loved, and cared for. I don't draw lines between mine and someone else's kid, but at the same time, I won't accept having my love measured or compared, like someone's keeping score of who got more or less. Since I don't live close to my sister, I carefully placed the order in advance, picked the gift wrap, and had it delivered straight to her house, timed perfectly for the birthday. I thought, if I can't be there in person, at least the gift will show my intentions. Honestly, I was a little nervous. I didn't know how he would react, whether he'd be happy, whether it would touch him. I wasn't expecting praise or thanks. All I really hoped for was a simple message, something like, "I love it. Thank you." But all I got was silence. Total silence. No message, no phone call, not even a reply after I sent one first. And that's when I started to feel like something wasn't right. I wasn't expecting praise or compliments. All I hoped for was a simple thank you message, just a few words like, "I really liked it, thank you." But all I got in return was silence. Complete silence. No message, no call, no reply, even though I was the one who reached out first. And that's when I started feeling like something was off. To give you the full picture, let me backtrack a bit to the preparation phase, because maybe everything that followed stemmed from what seemed like a perfectly reasonable decision at the time. I sent the gift directly to my sister's house. You see, my house and hers are almost 400 kilometers apart. It's not easy to just stop by, especially since I was busy preparing a small birthday party for my daughter. I went back and forth between hiring a private delivery service and ordering online from a large retailer that offered gift wrapping and guaranteed delivery on the exact date. In the end, I went with the second option. It was cleaner, more professional, and less room for error. I spent several days researching carefully before settling on the PS5, not just the console, but also a gaming headset, an extra controller, and some age-appropriate popular games. I requested a simple yet elegant wrapping paper and a deep blue ribbon, his favorite color, or at least it used to be, according to something my sister once mentioned years ago. I even added a handwritten note. Happy birthday. I hope this gift brings you lots of joy and helps you relax and have fun. Even though I can't always be around, I care about you deeply. Nothing fancy, nothing over the top. Just honest words. From the heart. When I got the delivery confirmation, I let out a sigh of relief. At that point, my only worry was whether my daughter had figured out what I'd gotten her. How would she react when she saw the car in the driveway? I threw myself into organizing the little birthday party at home, decorating it with all the things she loved. Pastel balloons, string lights, matcha and corn-flavored cake, and a few handmade gifts from her friends. Everything went perfectly. When she stepped outside and saw the car with a big red bow on it, she froze. Tears started streaming down her face, not because she was spoiled or deprived. No, but because she knew how much planning and quiet effort I had poured into it. That moment, I wanted to hold on to it forever. It was simple, but it held the full weight of love and family. Later that same day, after the party, I pulled out my phone and texted my nephew. Nothing elaborate, just a simple check-in. Did you have a nice birthday? Did you like the gift? No response. I left it there and waited until the afternoon. Still nothing. I started to worry. Could the package have been delivered to the wrong person? Or maybe there was some technical issue? I checked the confirmation email again. Everything matched. Correct name, correct address. There was even a note that read, hand-delivered to recipient's parent. It didn't make sense, but I tried to stay calm. Maybe the kid was busy. Maybe he was shy. Still, a quick thank you text doesn't take more than a few seconds, especially for a gift worth nearly $1,000. Then darker thoughts started creeping in. Could it be that my sister got involved somehow? With her, I always have to be careful. Ever since we were kids, she's had this quiet, competitive streak, always watching to see who got more attention, whose child got treated better. I still remember one time I took my daughter to the park, snapped a photo, and posted it online. She called me furious, yelling, "Why didn't you invite my son, too?" At first, I thought she was joking, but no, she was dead serious. So when my nephew stayed silent, and my sister didn't say a word either, even though she obviously knew I had sent a gift, I started to feel something deeper. Intentional silence. It wasn't just a lack of response. It was a passive rejection. That night, after the birthday party wound down and the guests had all gone home, I couldn't stop replaying the question in my mind. Why? I went to bed, stared at my phone, and told myself, maybe she'll call tomorrow to say thank you. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. But I was wrong. Very wrong. The next day, my phone rang. I picked it up, half expecting a warm thank you, a cheerful follow-up, or just a quick confirmation that the gift had arrived. Instead, I was met with a voice full of frustration, almost angry, and her very first sentence left me stunned. Why does your daughter get a car while my son gets nothing? The next day, the phone rang. I thought she was calling to say thank you, to ask how things were, or just to acknowledge the gift, but no. Her voice was full of frustration and irritation, and her very first sentence left me stunned. Why did your kid get a car but mine didn't? It took me a few seconds to process. I thought I had misheard. But no, she emphasized every single word like I had committed some sort of ultimate betrayal. I froze. My feelings shifted from confusion to discomfort, then gradually to a deep sense of disappointment. I hadn't even had the chance to ask if my nephew got the gift, if he liked it, if he was enjoying his new game. Instead, what I got was a hostile interrogation, and she didn't even bother to beat around the bush. My son had a birthday that day too. Same age, also a boy, and yet he only got a toy? While your son gets a whole damn car? You really think that's fair? I honestly wanted to laugh, not out of amusement, but because I felt completely helpless. Yes, my son got a car, because that was the gift I had planned for a long time, because that's what he truly wanted, and more than anything, because he's my son. As for my nephew, I didn't forget him. I didn't send a cheap or thoughtless gift. A brand new PS5 with all the accessories. How is that just some toy? And even if it was just a toy, so what? A gift isn't about its price. It's about how well it fits the person receiving it. But to my sister, that seemed to mean nothing. She kept going on and on about how disappointed her son was, how he sulked all day, how he felt he'd been treated unfairly. She even accused me of making her son feel less valued and ruining his birthday. I started to feel this deep, aching frustration, but I still tried to stay calm. Sis, my child is my child. I have the right to give him whatever I feel is suitable and within my means. Your son did get a gift. It's not like I ignored him. I even chose something you once told me you couldn't afford to get him last year. She paused for a few seconds, then suddenly her tone turned sharp and bitter. That's the problem. You can afford it, so why not split it evenly between the two? I was nearly speechless. So that's how she sees it? That love and family responsibility are measured in financial terms? I'm not heartless. If I were so rich I didn't know what to do with my money, maybe I would have bought a car for both kids. But I have my own limits. I'm still struggling every day to raise my child and manage expenses. That car didn't come from leftover money. It came from savings, sacrifices, and long-term planning. I tried to keep my voice steady. Sis, I gave my son that gift because he's my son. I love my nephew, but he's not my child. I can care. I can show love, but I can't, and shouldn't have to, carry the emotional responsibility for both kids. And if you think I'm wrong for not giving your son a car too, then maybe we need to rethink what it means to be a parent. Her voice turned cold. So what? You're saying my son means nothing to you? That question stopped me in my tracks, not because it was true, but because it was so wrong, and yet she said it like it was an undeniable fact. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. No, sis, I never said that. But let me be clear. Your son is not my son. I can care about him. I can love him. But I cannot, and am not obligated to, treat the two kids exactly the same as if I were their mother. After that, silence. She didn't say another word. The call ended in this heavy, suffocating atmosphere, a mix of anger, denial, and unwillingness to face reality. I stared at the dark phone screen, feeling hollow. Not because I thought I was wrong, but because I never expected that the difference in the kids' reactions, my daughters and my nephews, would reveal such a deep rift in our family bond. When my daughter received the car, she cried because she understood it came from love, sacrifice, and all the saving I had done. She was grateful, not for the car itself, but for the love I poured into it. My nephew, or more precisely my sister, saw that same gift as an insult to their pride, not because the gift wasn't good enough, but because it wasn't the same. Comparison kills gratitude. Entitlement kills kindness. I texted my nephew again. Still no reply. That message remains unread on my phone, a silent witness to a bond that has somehow slipped out of sync. The message I sent to my nephew still sits silently in the chat box, like a closed door no one bothers to open. No seen checkmark. No reply. And I'm not sure if that's just the silence of a moody teenager or a deliberate wall put up by his mother, my sister, because of something she deemed unfair. I didn't rush to call her back, not out of pride, but because I've grown used to her passive-aggressive way of dealing with things. Every time something upsets her, she doesn't talk it out. She doesn't communicate. She just lets the silence thicken to the point of suffocation, as if silence itself were some noble form of punishment. But this time, she didn't stay silent for long. 3 days after the birthday, on a weekend afternoon, I got a second call from her. I picked up, and just as I had sensed, there was no beating around the bush. Her voice came straight through the phone, louder than usual, laced with hurt and fury. Have you ever thought that my son has feelings too? That maybe he felt less than when he saw your daughter getting a whole damn car? I swallowed hard. The question hit like an accusation. But I kept my composure. I understand he might have felt upset, but I didn't mean to make any kind of comparison. I simply did what I felt was best for my daughter. And she is my daughter, after all. She nearly shouted, "So what is my son to you? Just some random kid?" I froze for a few seconds. Part of me wanted to yell back, to make it crystal clear that I wasn't responsible for her son's happiness, especially since she'd never done anything remotely similar for mine. But I held myself back. No, he's not just some random kid. I remembered his birthday, I bought him a gift, I placed the order, I wrote a card, I did everything I could within my means. Are you seriously upset that I didn't buy him a car? She didn't answer that directly. Instead, she veered into a personal attack. You always think you're better than everyone. You can't do a single thing without broadcasting it. You gave her a car and posted stories, pictures, like you were trying to rub it in everyone's face. I was taken aback. Yes, I had posted pictures, but privately, only with close friends on a limited list. And even if I had made it public, what's so wrong with sharing a joyful moment with my daughter? Am I supposed to hide everything, tiptoe around life just so others don't feel inadequate? I took a deep breath. This isn't about social media. It's not about showing off. This is about family. I gave my daughter that gift because she deserved it. I gave your son a gift too, because I care. But I can't, and am not obligated to, even things out the way you want me to. She cut me off, almost in tears. So you think my son deserves to feel like he got the short end of the stick? He never asked for anything. He just stayed silent. But you know what? It's that silence that hurts me the most. I heard her voice tremble, and for the first time I sensed a sliver of truth in what she said. Maybe she really was heartbroken over her son feeling left out, but that didn't mean I was wrong. It didn't mean I was at fault for trying to bring happiness to my own child. And it certainly didn't mean I had to meet expectations she built up in her own mind. And then, in a moment of weakness, I said the one thing I knew would ignite the final spark. I'm sorry if this made your son upset, but I have to be honest. Your son isn't my child. I can't live and think as if I'm the mother of both. The line went quiet on the other end. Then, beep, 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 she hung up. I put my phone down, my heart heavy, not with regret, but with the quiet understanding that from that moment on, something in our relationship had shifted. Maybe for good. That evening, I got a call from our mother. And as expected, she took my sister's side. She told me I shouldn't play favorites, that I should be more considerate, and the one line that truly stunned me. What do you mean her kid and your kid? They're all family. Giving one more than the other is planting the seed of injustice. I didn't say a word. I was too tired to argue. But something inside me quietly broke. Because I realized, some people will never see the heart behind your actions. If the gift you give doesn't match the picture they had in their heads. And when a gift becomes an excuse to blame, to compare, then love itself turns into a transaction. Something to be priced, bargained over, and rejected. The call with Mom ended. I sat there in silence, in a small room that had been dark for hours. Only the faint light from my phone lit the space, while my mind spun in chaos. My mom, the one who always told me to live kindly, to live with heart, was now siding with demands. The same woman who once told me, "What you choose to give someone is your right," was now saying I was being unfair just because I didn't divide gifts like slices of cake. I couldn't understand it. Truly, I couldn't understand it anymore.
Since when did affection become a duty? Just because I have a little more, does that mean I owe it to make up for what others lack? Even if I had no hand in creating that lack? I wasn't sad anymore. What remained was a cold, sharp clarity. And in that stillness, I realized something. It was time to draw a boundary. Clear, firm, without guilt. I stopped talking to my sister. No texts, no calls, no explanations.
I let every accusation fall into silence because I knew that trying to explain myself in a conversation already skewed by blind emotion was pointless. I returned to my daughter. She was still glowing with joy from the surprise gift, still sharing photos of her new car, her journey learning to drive, her plan to use it to drive her little cousin to tutoring. I looked at her and felt my heart soften, because at least the child I had sacrificed for still appreciated and valued it. But I also knew if I gave gifts to anyone else, every gift from now on would be scrutinized. No longer a gesture from the heart, but a spreadsheet. If I bought my nephew a laptop, someone would ask why I didn't get him a phone instead. If I gave my friend's kid a toy, someone would say, "What about your sister's child?" Every act of giving would be weighed like a scale, and I'd be trapped in a game I never signed up to play. I didn't want that. I used to believe if I lived with sincerity, people would understand. But after this, I finally learned. Sincerity can't survive unreasonable expectations. I wasn't sad because of my sister's resentment anymore. I was sad because I realized, all these years, I had always been the younger sibling who had to carry the weight. When we were kids, I got good grades. She was compared. When we grew up, I became successful. She said I was just lucky.
When I bought a house, she called it good timing. And now, when I buy a car for my daughter, she says I'm causing division. Not once, not once have I heard the words, "You've done well." Not from her. I also reflected on my relationship with my nephew. I once thought, even if we weren't close, he'd at least feel that I cared. But his silence, whether by choice or influence, showed me. Sometimes giving doesn't build connection, it just builds expectations. And so I made a decision that sounds simple, but for me is a turning point. I will no longer give gifts to anyone. Not because I'm petty, not because I'm stingy, but because I refuse to let my love be translated into dollar signs. I don't want my gifts to become units to measure kindness, or worse, tools for comparison, division, and resentment. I know some people won't be happy with this. Some will say I'm being difficult or holding a grudge. But I no longer need their understanding. I wasn't born to be an emotional ATM for those who refuse to grow up. I live for my daughter, for the peace I've spent years building. A week after the birthday, I got a text from my mom. "You should at least call your sister. Your blood, after all." I read it. I didn't reply, but I didn't block her either. I just left it there. The same way I left all the baseless accusations, no reaction, no response.
Then I opened my phone, went into notes, and typed just one sentence. "Your child is not my child, and I don't have to feel guilty about that." I didn't post it online, didn't share it with anyone. I kept it for myself, like a quiet declaration, but clear enough. Clear enough to remind myself, every time I feel doubt, I have the right to love. But I also have the right to choose where that love begins and where it ends.